the topic is leveraging technology for creating a high-performing organization. And I remember there is another award which happens by People Matters called L&D Leadership League, Learning and Development Leadership League. And I happen to be the jury member for that league for last now 4 years now. And one of the most embarrassing moments for us as jury members was when under the category of technology, we had just 2 entries. So under 5 categories, we had about 92 entries that year. And under technology, there were just 2 entries. And one of them was how that company was showing video films to their teams for learning. And then they, with due respect, they thought they can compete for best practice in leveraging technology. So my I don't know, and I want to take a quick audience poll asking, where do you see your organization in leveraging technology for creating a high performance? I mean, on a scale of, let's say, 1 to 5, 1 being we don't leverage technology at all for creating a high performance organization, versus 5, we said we really, really utilize the technology very well as our competitive advantage to create a high performance organization. Where do you see your own organization? How many of you say 1? Just raise your hand. 2. Raise your hand clearly so we can see. Okay. 3. 4. 5. Okay. So most of the people in 3 and 4 in leveraging technology to create a high-performing organization. And I'm going to pick up from there and go to somebody who has worked with many different industries. And David, you have been in consulting and you have had experience with a lot of different companies in different sectors and different geographies. In your experience, how good or how weak are companies in leveraging technology for creating a high-performing organization?
So I appreciate that you started the question by a poll, right? I'm going to actually ask the audience a similar poll. It'll just help ground me a bit. So how many of you saw Josh Berson's keynote this morning? That's what I expected, most of the room. So that's the organization I work with. I work for Josh. I lead the research team at Berson. So we look at lots of organizations on questions like this one. It's interesting, because when we talk about, I think I would point out, maybe I'm going to answer the question in 2 parts. In short, I think most organizations are making effective use of technologies to support high performance. But the interesting part of that question is how we're redefining what high performance means, and then therefore how technology is involved is changing. I mean, as long as enterprise has been around, as long as there has been business, we've used technology to automate, to increase efficiencies, to give us capabilities we didn't have before. That's been true, and it's still true. But something's changed now, and what you see, and Josh talked a little bit about this morning, and the trends, whether it's in HR specifically, and how HR is now using technologies to actually make the business materially better, or even beyond in the organization, there's something now exponential in the way we're using data to inform the performance of teams, and to know if a team is successful, or to know if an individual manager has the hearts and minds of their employees, to make decisions about where we hire or where we promote or so forth. I had the privilege this week of spending some time with an organization, a client of ours here in India, with a very large, complex, far-flung retail organization. And they had a challenge, which many of you I'm sure you have, which is onboarding new hires and getting them into the systems and getting them that first employee number, the all-important employee number that will drive so many things. Well, in the course of essentially about a year and a half's time, they've gone from where that process of getting that employee number was taking in the neighborhood of a couple of days, down to about 8 hours, down to now it's about 22 seconds. Wow. Of course, that's the still original story about automation and efficiencies and so forth, but that's transformational in how the business operates now, right? That's technology to, what does that allow you to do? What is that freeing the local manager to do? Because you have just materially transformed what is, a fairly mundane process.
And in fact, you were talking about transformation in the organization and how technology enables that. And Rajesh, your organization is right now going through a cultural transformation and capability building and transformation. So how are you leveraging technology for this cultural transformation in your organization?
We're in the midst of a cultural transformation, and we're doing a few things. And the entire cultural transformation, if I were to talk in terms of Wellspun 2.0, where we're trying to lead the entire group to a 2020 high-performing kind of an outfit, what it really means is, are we in a position to deliver our three deliverables in terms of people, profit, and the planet? So in this, we are anchoring it around the 5 C's, as I define it. 5 C's would mean the customer, the capabilities, the culture bit of it, and I think culture has been cutting across discussions. Even in this morning, I was hearing about it. And the fourth one is count, so that we exactly know how we're going to quantify our results in the output. And the fifth one is continuous. I'll speak a little bit about it. I'm not in a position to maybe cut across all of them for paucity of time, but there are 2 or 3 initiatives, and you did force rank people to say in terms of what maturities each one were. I would also be bold enough to say in some we are possibly 2, in some we are possibly 7, but I think the endeavor is to definitely try out a few. First, let me speak a little bit about the customer bit of it. I think the aspect of trying to build a considerable amount of insights for the customer into the people organization is a clear attempt using technology. So there's a continuous view on people and the culture bit of it that we are doing. And fortunately for us, at least in one part of the business, 85% comes from about 15 top customers. So there's a very clear aspect that we can, take to the customers to get a very sneak view in terms of what we are doing. Likewise, on the people side, we will ensure that they have a customer visibility so that it works both ways. So from a predictive standpoint, what are the customers' aspirations, and are we really bringing it into the people process part of it? I want to talk a little bit about the capability bit of it, and we are trying something called the Smart Mirror. What it really means is, and just to leave an effect of Smart Mirror, is all of us do stand in front of a mirror, and we have an easy view in terms of physical attributes, the way we look at ourselves. Do we know what capability does it show on us? And in today's life cycle, you don't have too much of time. When you're readying capability, can you have a quick view of where do you stand vis-a-vis capabilities of today and tomorrow? I think that's what we're trying to build. On the culture bit of it, we're trying to bring this Smart Mirror and trying to build a culture meter and building on a 3D model, which is culture, capabilities, and performance. And the culture meter will clearly tell you on a moving basis in terms of where are you as far as cultural assimilation, this entire transformation story is concerned. I think there's a considerable amount of digitization that we are doing even on the continuous basis, trying to build predictives, using analytics, doing a lot of stuff in terms of even the robotics, which is going to take big time. And bulk of the industries that we cater to is going to go through huge digital transformation at the end customer level. So if we are going to be cut out of this, I think we're going to be completely tested. So the people organization in terms of delivering performance to the streets, to the people, and to the planet, because inclusive growth is another big agenda that we have, is the bit of it. So I think the impact of it, if I were to just summarize in 5 words, what it really means from a customer experience, what does it mean from a go-to-market, compression of the market, because the cycles are really coming down. The third one is in terms of supply chain and logistics. And fourth is how do we really reduce the costs. And fifth one is people productivity. All of this, which leads to the HPO, is something we are trying to measure. Being successful, I would put myself in this entire journey on maybe a 3.5 or a 4 on 10, but at least the intent is fairly high. Intent, I would say, is 10 on 10. But the content in terms of readiness and go-to would be maybe a 3.5 or 4 on 10. But that's the journey. I can build more on it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for it. And it's a very nice way of putting it in a model of 5 C's. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you talked about one of the 5 C's is customer. And I'm going to, Nishant, in fact, there's something interesting that I experienced just last night. And in fact, I'm traveling tonight, and I was the first time I'm taking KLM. And I was trying to web check in my KLM flight. And I have not seen this anywhere, maybe you have seen with other airlines. When I checked in, somehow they, of course, now everything is linked. So somehow they figured out who I am, and they put my picture saying that, okay, is this you? Yes. And then they not only allowed me to choose my seat, of course, then they asked me, would I like to know who from my Facebook is traveling from the same flight, who from my LinkedIn connections is traveling for the same flight, who from my Twitter and Instagram is traveling in the same flight, and then populate the pictures of those people on the seats, allowing me to choose to sit with somebody or avoid somebody, as the case may be. And I hope that they didn't put my picture, and I don't want to see everybody moving to a different side of the plane because I am. But so I could see this airline putting technology for creating a very powerful customer experience. And you are right now from tourism industry, and you've had prior experience as well. How are you leveraging technology? I mean, we all know that tourism industry leverage technology for customer experience. That's a known fact, and it's been one of the front leaders. But how do you leverage technology for transforming the organization to a high performance? And how do you do that?
That's a good question, Kedar. In fact, it's been 2 years since I joined the travel industry, and I come from IT background earlier, and it was quite intriguing that will travel management companies or so-called travel agents, would they have any semblance of IT in the first place? So I joined Crony, and you realize that most of these travel companies have celebrated centuries of existence. So which means the organizations are high performing, the organizations have gone through a lot of renewal. SOTC itself has celebrated 68 years now. Before Crony acquired it and now again sold it. So we are part of Fairfax and Thomas Root. Today, and you have seen online travel companies and kind of technological changes that has happened. But it's very interesting to understand that a high-performing organization, in my mind, is trying to be better, faster, and stronger. Mm-hmm. And that was the ethos, in terms of how do we leverage technology to get access to customers and make our sales and product team very productive. For instance, earlier we had multiple systems, and there were disparate systems. Some system would have knowledge of products and various holiday destinations. Some systems would just have some information about some lead generation, but these systems would never interact. So if a customer would call, and if my salesperson does not know who that customer is, you would certainly not like to do business with that kind of that company. So we realized that there was a need to have a CRM strategy, and it was more of a strategy than a software. We realized that we need to ensure that our sales and product development teams are able to leverage that CRM technology. So last year was a massive year of implementation. We called it Project Dhruv. There were project teams across. There were KRS defined for each of these. And interestingly, we started with something called having a technology strategy. What happens is if a company does not have a technology strategy, then these systems are only a piecemeal approach. And HR is part of that technology strategy. So he sits with the CIO, understands that what kind of software would be required. Oh, all right, we may have a payroll software, but we require a software which is related to other aspects of HR as well, not just recruitment or performance management. And how do we connect it? Similarly, sales and product development team would sit across with the, and we had Deloitte who worked with us, as a consultant, and they guided us. They did a series of interviews across the organization, getting data and getting feedback as to what essentially you want. Interestingly, the first challenge came where there was no standardization of process and data. For instance, today, employee can mean different things to different people. Mm-hmm. For some it would be full-time, for some it would be part-time employee. Revenue also has a different multiple definitions. So if your definitions are different, right, you will have a challenge. So we started working on a journey of how do we now get data and what data means to the employees. So you work on metadata and master data management. You work on data integration, data quality, and then you start the journey of working on CRM. So today what happens? My CRM software helps me, my salespeople, to know which leads are generated. Any customer calls, he has all the information, including the last 3 years' information. So if Kedar has traveled, Mr. Kedar, you traveled to Mauritius last year, this year, do you want to travel to Europe? And I will tell you where and when, on which date you have traveled with whom. So that kind of information rather is collected. So customer feels happy, saying, hey, there is some person who in the previous years used to find out who Mr. Kedar is in the first place. Okay? And is he a premium customer, is he a value customer, and so on and so forth. Second thing, those leads get generated and MIS gets created, and you can act on those business intelligence. Saying, okay, how faster we convert this lead? Do we get daily, information as to what happens in my branches, in various franchises, including our offices as well? How is this system interface with HR? because there I need to connect it with talent management software and also with SAP in finance, so that there is a connectivity and there's also payment gateway established through e-commerce. So what has happened is we have seen a behavioral change, and we have to drive this behavioral change. We had to educate employees as to no longer Excel sheet entries would be allowed. Excel, at some point in time is pointless to pay Microsoft that much of license fee. We can look at, with due respect to Microsoft, we can, restrict so that, you have a one single window of collecting data, and there is no multiple source of data collection. Two, salespeople also know that this is a lead which came to me, in how much time I'm going to convert this lead into, a fruition and possibly make this customer come and stay with me and work with me. Three, how am I going to fulfill that lead? Okay, what are the information that it requires? I am a salesperson. I may not be able to know what is best in Europe currently. Maybe, Brexit is a good thing. So immediately we came up with a Brexit package, because we know that the pound has gone down. It was because of this CRM and connectivity. So that's how it has helped internally and also externally. So maybe that's one example I can share with you.
Thank you so much. Then very interesting. You talked about creating a technology strategy, and I haven't heard many organizations. I don't know. I mean, how many of your organization has a technology strategy? I don't think my organization. Maybe they have. I don't know. Just a few of them. Just 3 or 4 of them. So that's really very insightful. And you talked about empowering and increasing the sales force productivity. And Tarun, I know your organization has really leveraged technology very effectively to not only give real-time feedback to the salespeople, but also for non-sales people in terms of their performance. So would you like to share some examples of how you've done that?
Sure. Thank you, Kedar, for raising a very interesting, situation. So I'll stick to a few examples which come to my mind rather than, in the paucity of time going completely into the strategic side. So the problem statement, so first of all, we are an organization who is a sales-oriented organization. So we are an organization who is into services, and our performance or our outcome depends on effectiveness of our sales force directly. So unlike other organizations where there can be different levers like consulting, etc. So our efficiencies are directly dependent on what is happening on our sales force. One of the review meetings and a lot of such review meetings which used to happen. So there is one, data which is called commonly watched numbers, CWN it is called, commonly watched numbers. So in a lot of our review meetings, including one of our board meetings, a question was raised that when we compare your commonly watched or commonly tracked data points, so on performance and on efficiencies, I think the organization can do much better. So ours, being a telecom services provider, it's a cutthroat competition as far as pricing, etc. is concerned. And we being new operator, we have to fight hard on pricing as well. So they just asked that if HR can, work with sales, etc., and come out with findings and what can be done ahead. So we sat with salespeople, analyzed what is going on, how and what data numbers are getting compared, etc. So two things which came out clearly. One was, an estimated time span which they calculated. They said your salespeople spend not more than 2.5 hours average in market, as compared to, a healthy average of 4 hours, which other companies like yours is doing. So that was one estimate which was thrown to us. And second, they pointed out that the people who go into the market, so they are not able to, effectively utilize their time. So whatever they are supposed to do in the market, because the way of working is such that everything is manual. So what used to happen therefore was, so in the end of the month, there was a sales plan for the next month which was handed over in hard copy to the people that this is what you have to deliver with some, broad numbers on 2-3 areas like gross ads, revenues, primary recharge, etc. That this is what you have to do. Accordingly now, basis that plan, the sales team used to draw their own beat plan, working plans, etc., which will ultimately result or not result in those numbers. And throughout the month, everything was, in gray as to what is happening. At the end of the month, people will come to know as to this is what we tried and this is what has happened. So that was a gap. That is where, we sat with our IT people and jointly with sales and IT, application was developed. This was an in-house work which happened. So this application now is called M Market, which is mobile market. So we have about 700 people who are in the field. So they all have Android phones because we are on CDMA, so we use Android technology. So now, through that M Market platform, so your sales plan was automated and given to me, given to them through IT 3 days before beginning of next month. So it was uploaded there. So there was an app given on all the Android phones which is called M Market. And then there are icons. You just open and you find your plan for next month. So that plan also then gets worked out with respect to your beat plan as to what you are supposed to do on day-to-day basis. So wherein there were a lot of changes which were done. So for example, if I am doing market visit, so when salespeople joined with us, we analyzed that a person who is going to market, so he or she, some of them might be going in a zigzag manner. So if you are to go through a market in a particular way, but the person is going at this place first, then going in some other direction, coming some other. So those all anomalies were, once they were analyzed, they were put on track, and then on a daily basis, each and every salesperson is able to see his or her beat plan right on the mobile app. Now what happens is, and that is tracked through GPS, once the person starts from his home, etc., and he reaches a retailer point, he just clicks. So there are about 18 to 20 fields which he has to fill up, and that is on Android. It's very easy to do. And finally, what happens is that the person is supposed to click 2-3 photographs of the displays which are there as far as your branding is concerned at the particular outlet. So it not only ensures that when you are visiting a shop, you are actually doing what you are supposed to do, plus, in terms of monitoring, I mean, earlier there might be opportunity that somebody is, sitting at home and filling up those forms. Now with GPS tracking and uploading of those photographs, etc., so things are quite, well controlled as far as the sales activity is concerned. So this is one small piece which, so there are about 6-7 such dimensions which are there to the entire tool. So what happened, so this is about 1.5 years, trial which we have done through this. And now our market working has come up from a earlier 2.5 hours, which was also predictive time, to a measurable time span of about 5 hours for salespeople who are in the market. And day-to-day working is very, very well planned, defined, and even if you are new, so you know what is to be done. And second application which we gave to them was, again, it was purely sales application, which is called M-Stock. Again, it is mobile stock. So one more complaint which was earlier there was that the planning for sales which happens on person by person, that is always, it is biased. Sometimes it is, not scientific. If I am doing X numbers in my market, I am always given high numbers. If he is doing less numbers, he is given less numbers. Even if his market potential is high, why I am to struggle. So all those things were there. So now with this M-Stock application also available to you on your mobile, so whenever you are visiting any outlet, so rather than you have to depend only on the verbal conversations with the shopkeeper, retailer, distributor. So you can access, MTD data as recent as yesterday's data to find out what kind of stock is available in the overall market. And it not only helps you in terms of planning, but also it's a real-time figure available to you for a salesperson as of yesterday, as to against his target, what exactly he has done. So gross heads, revenue, everything gets tracked. So individual is able to see where does he stand and what he has to do in the remaining days to reach to a certain number which is allocated to him.
Okay. Great.
So I think I have taken too much of time, but
No, that's all good.
beyond that,
That's all very
Kedar, for non-sales people, again, there was one element which was raised again and again. This was from corporate center employees, where in today's environment there are a lot of projects in which people have to work irrespective of their job profiles. So if I am at corporate center, I am in finance, I am in HR, I am in sales, marketing. A lot of times I am involved in some projects which are not part of my defined, KPIs or defined work, etc., but they are all projects which are important for the organization.
Right.
So there is an app which mandates, the team leader of any such project to record feedback for everybody who has participated in such projects, which then can be taken as part of your performance discussions.
Correct.
And because over a period of time, you also tend to forget that other than your work, you have also contributed in 8, 10 such projects, and there was some feedback, positive development areas, etc. So all those important elements get captured, and that becomes part of your
Right.
continuous track of performance.
Right. Right.
So,
Thanks.
thanks.
And thank you for sharing that. I will take that opportunity to thank all four of our guests, Rajesh, David, Tarun, Nishant. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. Thank you so much for your time. And I do hope that the insight shared by all of you will really help our HR leaders accelerate the use of technology in creating a high-performance organization. So thank you so much. And thank you for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you.